considering seriously the options out there in terms of new technology, particularly digital ordering, because that's the one bit that's really new today and that is deeply game-changing. This is multiple ways of interacting with customers digitally. Even though the operator might see themselves as more of a traditional kind of operators, there are ways this digital technology can transform and enhance the way you work, and at the end of the day, how much margin you're making. So you probably want to really explore that.
Welcome to the Hospitality Maverick podcast with me, Michael Tingsager. We at Hospitality Mavericks are here to inspire leaders to create heart-centered and profitable businesses from the inside out, the kind that both employees and customers love and support. Thanks to BizSimply for sponsoring this episode as our show partner. BizSimply is the all-in-one HR, workforce management, and road and operation software designed and built by hospitality experts to make every shift run like clockwork. And we join forces to help the industry to find new ways to become even more innovative in how we lead our people, how we operate, how we grow our businesses, and how we serve our customers. Together we want to share strategies and tools that can make the industry thrive long term, not to just survive. I'm super excited about today's conversation because we'll be talking about e-commerce and delivery technology for independent hospitality operators. For this, I have one of the founders of StoreKit, Christophe Delacroix. StoreKit helps smaller operators to get effective and affordable e-commerce tools. Christophe shares what the challenges are for smaller operators when it comes to select and implement technology and achieve the return of investment needed. He highlights that many tech products are very difficult to implement and take too much time to get working properly for small operators. Christophe talks about technology to enable operators to make a fast change when needed and at the same time be 100% in control. He shares insights about how some operators that have got this right have achieved 10 to 50% additional spend per head, saving staff costs and making better marketing decisions due to better data on their customers. Along the way, we talk delivery, data and how to use it, understanding your customers, advertising spend that turns into sale, how to select technology, top future trends in hospitality, his entrepreneurial journey, and much more. Before you tune in, please sign up to our weekly newsletter on hospitalitymavericks.com, packed with more Maverick insights, strategies, and tools. Now, grab notebook and let's get started. I am super excited about today's conversation because we're going to be talking about technology, and we have talked about technology often here, but we're going to talk about technology that can be put in hands in the smaller operators. And actually, often I think that there's a gap there in the market. So for a couple of months ago, I met StoreKit and Christophe, and I found out actually they had this solution that could help you digitalize your e-commerce, your business as a small operator. So I'm very excited that Christophe is on the podcast today, and we're going to be talking about exactly that. How do you actually get started if you're not already started? How do you actually optimize your e-commerce channels? Because these are, here to stay. And there's a lot of people out there talking about delivery, omni-channel, diverse revenue streams, and there's so much going on right now. But how do you actually sometimes get started as a small operator, and actually how do you optimize this can be a massive challenge. So it gives me great pleasure to invite you, Christophe, to the show today.
Hi, Michael. Thank you. I'm very pleased to be on the podcast.
Christophe, when I met StoreKit, I think we met on LinkedIn, and then I started looking at this. This is super interesting, I thought, because I think you were solving a very important problem in the tech space around the independent operator. For people that haven't heard about StoreKit and know what you're about, can you just give like a short, elevator pitch about, StoreKit and who you are as well as the founder or one of the founders?
Of course. So StoreKit is an e-commerce platform for independent hospitality operators. So that means that an independent restaurant, a pub, a cafe can sign up on StoreKit, and then they can create a digital store or a digital menu, you could say, where that they can present to their customers, and these customers can buy from the operator directly wherever they are. So I think that's the interesting part of e-commerce today, E-commerce, when we talk about e-commerce for hospitality, we think about online, we think about delivery, we think about click and collect, and all of that's correct. But what's really interesting is that e-commerce starts to come in the store, and our platform enables their customers to use their device to place an order when they're already inside the venue. So that's what we do. A digital platform, which is the word is Omni-Channel, and the operators can sell directly to their customers without paying commissions to third parties.
That's super interesting because that's another subject. There's a lot of conversation about, especially the third parties like Delivery, Uber in the moment, about these massive fees that doesn't work for the operators. And there's a lot of questions from the investment side if these companies actually are able to turn into a profit at some point, and are they actually good for the industry? So actually what you do is in a way give the power a bit back in the hands of the smaller operators that really struggles with these huge commission fees. Is that correctly understood?
Absolutely. This is the whole idea. It's to give a tool to the operators so they can sell directly and build their own business. So we're called StoreKit. It's very much this idea of we're very much aligned with our customer, the operator. We're not trying to build a marketplace or aggregate orders. We give them a tool, they sign up, it's their business, it's their customers, it's their transactions. So this is the ethos that we live by every day.
And how did you come to solve this problem? What was it that took you here and started working with this problem compared to all the different problems you can solve in hospitality or in tech for that sake?
Well, so I mean, personally, I my journey, I guess, is a bit unusual in a way. I mean, I started my career as a business consultant, worked with large hospitality groups at head office level, and then I did open a couple of coffee shops in Paris with a friend 10 years ago now. And I love doing this. I was probably more of a business person, and I decided to come to UK to start working in the selling technologies to hospitality businesses, essentially. And I found it was a very interesting space, and there was just so much coming on with the cloud. Many small businesses don't have very good tools to run their business. I saw that firsthand, in these coffee shops we were opening with my friend in Paris. And I saw the same thing here. And with the cloud, you had all these new, system that allowed smaller operators to have access to tools that were reserved before to chains or larger operator. And that's what we've seen the last 10 years. We've seen these tools becoming more democratized and essentially giving more better access to data to the independent operators. I think that the specific problem of independent operators and that we really try to solve, and I think we're quite unique in that way, is that we know them very well and we like them, and they struggle with time. They struggle with money. Technology and payment processing are industries that sell products that can seem quite expensive to independent operators. And as they're time poor and cash poor, they often struggle to implement these systems. And once they're in place, maybe they have access to the data, but then they might not have time to actually use them and implement the actions that they should to actually improve their business. So I think the angle we've taken with StoreKit is about helping operators implement the technology in the easiest possible way. So everything we do when building our platform is about making sure that if a new pub or a new restaurant comes on StoreKit and sign up, they can do this in a matter of hours, if not minutes, in certain cases. So at a high level, you could say, well, it's about enabling these operators to digitalize themselves, enabling them to very quickly have an e-commerce store for click and collect, for delivery, for in-store QR code payment. And everything we do in the product is about this, enabling them to have access to the technology and to implement it quickly.
Yeah, and what is typical the type of operators that you have signed up? Because I guess there's also been an exciting, it had not been an exciting year for for the industry in a while, but it's been an exciting year for the product you have, because that has been needed more than ever to create this digitalization of menus, as you say, QR codes and so on. What are the typical operator that comes and actually sign on to StoreKit? How do they look, and what problems do they have?
Yeah, it's your independent operators. So we have I mean, obviously, there's been a weird. The last 12 months have been quite odd, right? We've had lockdown, out of lockdown, back in. So the type of business we work with are independent restaurants, as I said, cafes, pub, takeaways, theaters, or even golf courses. There's quite a variety of use cases. And the way they approached us kind of depended on when they've approached us over the last 12 months. So during the lockdown, so pretty much between November and March, we had lots of people coming on the platform to start selling for click and collect or for delivery. People from everywhere in the country needed to activate their stores to be able to take orders and payments. And so we've enabled a lot of these operators. Sometimes restaurants that certainly needed to do delivery and they didn't before. Sometimes operators that decided to create temporary stores, sometimes cooking from their kitchens for the neighborhoods. And then in March and of course since the beginning of April, we had many more businesses approaching us to implement in-venue ordering and payment with the reopening of outdoor hospitality. It's the same platform. The workflows and the settings and the software obviously change if you want to use it for click and collect or for in-store. But I think in-store is probably where most of the traction, where most of the need are going to be felt, I guess, by operator. So we enable them to take payments and orders from QR code, from NFC tags, from other ways. And the efficiencies that the operators find when they implement StoreKit are game changing in terms of revenue generation, in terms of cost savings.
It's interesting you mentioned that you see, and what you're observing is that it's the in-store kind of digitalizing the in-store, because we, from what you read, sometimes you believe it's the delivery and the takeaway element, which of course has been important. But I was on an interesting panel a couple of weeks ago in Better Hospitality, and that both the operators and their independent operators, one of them, I think they have 5 locations and the other one has two locations, I think. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe 1. But they both said that they have customers that hunger to come back to get the experience. And as that happened, they have already dialed down the whole takeaway, what they're delivering out of the house, actually. And they say, because that's not why we're here, but we still need technology to improve the in-store experience from a safety point of view, but also from a efficient point of view, because we can't, from a cost point of view, operate the same way we did before. Is that also what you mean with the benefits you talk about the clients you have seen have?
Yes, exactly. I think what we're trying to do is we understand that businesses have to be ready to change, and they have to be ready to please their customers the way they want to. So that's the way we thought the platform. And yes, if you sign up on StoreKit, you'll be able to have your menu, sell it in store if that's what you want to do, if that's your core channel. But if you think there's an opportunity to have a click and collect activity, why not just turn it on? And it's going to be there. It's up to the business to decide if they want to do that or not. From our end, we just enable them to sell across channels. Every business is different. One thing I've learned working with operators over the last few years is that they all have, they're very creative people, and they're trying to build experience for their customers, something that's special. And every business is different. And what we're trying to do is just give them the flexibility to do whatever they want to do. And we have a few multi-sites, quite a growing number of multi-site customers as well. And sometimes different venues under the same brand operate in different ways. Some venues might have a delivery click and collect, and some venues might might not be adequate for that type of activity. So, maybe they won't use StoreKit exactly in the same way across the outlets. I think it's all about enabling the channels, in giving them flexibility, and really let them take control of their business. So, to echo what I was saying before, enable them to digitalize, to go online, to use this tool, to sell everywhere, but then after really being in control of their business and sell the way they want to.
You talked about some really, if you say like let's take it from the approach that you're fully open and you can operate. You're not in some kind of lockdown mode. And hopefully on the 17th of May, we're sitting here early May. Well, we'll all be back again, and the doors will be open, and we're able to trade as normal. But what kind of typical gains are these operators seeing? Is it what can they expect from a revenue? Do you have an idea about this is typical what we see when they get it right?
Absolutely. So I think there's a few things. So as a multi-channel is interesting at first level, because if you're doing I don't know, if you have a garden, an outdoor terrace, and maybe you also do click and collect, the fact that you have omni-channel means you'll be more resilient in theory. You have a rainy day, you'll do more click and collect and delivery. The sun is out, people will come in the store, right? So being able to have a platform where you can sell everywhere at any time gives you this flexibility and more resilience as a business. In terms of more generally, like once people implement StoreKit, operators implement StoreKit, what we see is there's kind of three sources of efficiency. The first one is revenue, as you suggested. We see revenue increase. That's not specific to StoreKit, but there is something that seems to be a universal truth. Humans tend to order more and spend more when they do it on the screen. So that's something that McDonald's has known for a long time with the kiosk, but it's also true with any sort of digital ordering. So if you have a customer that orders food on their screen, they will tend to spend more. Is it because they don't have any shame? Is it because it's easier and faster? To be honest with you, there's not much studies out there to really explain this, but to give you an idea, anecdotally, we see between 10 and 30% increase in spending per head. So that's really interesting. It's probably something you want to factor in as an operator when you decide to implement a digital system. I think where there can be a difference between systems is how easy is the checkout, and that's probably something I haven't mentioned yet. I focused about the experience we try to create for the operators using our software. But a big part of the driving philosophy of StoreKit is about giving the customer, their clients, so the consumer coming in the restaurant, an experience that is consumer grade. Consumers today want to, if they order digitally, they will want to be able to understand the menu quickly, to go over the menu items very efficiently. They will want to check out with Apple Pay. They will want this ordering process to be very fast. Too many times, and I'm sure you'll share that feeling, but as a consumer, I have been asked to download an app. I found myself using a clunky application with nested menu and very inefficient kind of workflow in the app, and that's actually something that deters me from ordering more. So if you're an operator and you choose a digital experience, if you want to make sure that you'll maximize revenue, choose a platform that will give your customers a frictionless experience. That's really, really key. And what I mean by frictionless experience is not necessarily the one that pleases you the most, or that you find the most beautiful. It's the one that's the most efficient and fast for the customer. So that's super key. So revenue increase is a big point, and you should definitely factor this expectation when making a choice on such a system. I'm a little bit long, but just two other efficiencies. One is operationally. There's no doubt that if that's your objective, you can save on staff cost. We have anecdotal evidence that an operator, a pub, for instance, can save about 50% of the running staff cost if they wanted to take orders from the table via a QR code. Because obviously the waiters are freed from the order taking and collecting the payment task. Typically, what we do is that we do not suggest that operators do that. We suggest that they reallocate the free time to engage with customers, maybe greet them and check on them much more than they should. I think it's a great opportunity to actually leverage the technology to talk more to your customers in a more organic way. And the last efficiency is around marketing. Marketing, because I think for the first time ever, every operator will have access to building a CRM and building a clear understanding of who is coming in their store, where they order, when they order, what they order, because that's obviously information that is collected through our platform and will give them great power to be able to grow their business in the long run.
Yeah, and that's so interesting. You ended at that point because I was sitting and thinking about this because I had a conversation or a podcast conversation with Victoria from DataHawks the other weeks, and she said that for we had a lot of data floating around in our POS system and so on, but now actually technology is taken to a point where you actually now, as you say, can actually understand your raving fans. You know who to cater for, who to market to, who not to market to on specific days. But of course you need to dive into it, but you actually have the opportunity now more than ever because technology, especially the last 12 months, has evolved with the pandemic going on. And it's so interesting how much power you actually, if you sit down strategic, as you say, look at that data, how much growth you actually can maybe be missing by not understanding. And I know an example from a local operator that was a bit hesitant doing home delivery, and they started it some heat up the food in here in the south, and then by looking at the data, they also found out that they were trying to market to specific areas. There was 2 areas where they spent a lot of marketing money, but there was no one ordering for them, and then they turned that marketing money into those other areas where they normally get quite good uptake, and they almost doubled the uptake because they were already there, the people that were interested, and then when they were driving around, they got the drivers to put down what type of houses was it, what car was there parked there, what kind of supermarket was in that area, and now they know exactly about the raving fans, how they look, and that's going to change the business going forward because they're going to always think about how do we market to our raving fans and not to everyone. And I think that's a really big key lesson. That's a really reasonable small group with 4 units. It's not a big. But they just had the data, so they didn't have to spend the time suddenly looking into it. And that's just an interesting way of thinking about how you actually can benefit from these systems as well.
I agree. And I think it's a good time to start collecting data. And as you said, everyone doesn't necessarily have time to look at these data. Some people feel overwhelmed. I think the beauty of technology and software is that it's there's more and more product out there that actually enable you to use this data and act upon it, right? So I think it's interesting what you just said about like targeting specific areas. Obviously, you can know with StoreKit like where your orders are coming from. You can have a map and know exactly what are the destination points of the food for with delivery. Platforms like Instagram are becoming extremely powerful. They've made quite a bit of investment into developing their platform for local businesses, and you can run targeting campaign to aim at specific neighborhoods so that the locals will see your ad popping up into their Instagram feed, and it's pretty efficient. You can do test runs. You put 100 quid or 200 quid on a certain neighborhood, and then you can have an integration with StoreKit. You will know how much you spend, where you spend, how much of these advertising spend turns into an actual delivery sale. That's very new for hospitality. Retailers had access to this data for years now, but I think it's exciting.
It's really exciting, yeah, because I actually didn't know that with Instagram, and maybe people out there know that. But again, I can remember I think I probably been because the local restaurant businesses is most using it because the other day I got suddenly sushi on my Instagram profile, and that was definitely a sponsored ad, but it was a good ad, and I went in and looked at their shop and thought that looks reasonable, decent. I didn't buy, but definitely I know they are on my radar now that actually I can order directly for them. I don't have to use an aggregator, which maybe is one of my criteria as a consumer when I choose. Is there other things about choosing technology? Because that's often where operators, I feel, get overwhelmed. And I'm not an expert in this, but I always try to guide them and understand your business have the needs your business have, and you shouldn't do what the neighbor does because maybe what the neighbor does works for them and not for you. But there's the other things they need to be aware as they choose technology, and not only in maybe the delivery technology, in general technology. How do you actually stress test that you're doing the right thing because you're investing not only money but your time in getting this working?
Yeah, there's so many. It's a minefield, right? There's so many different pieces of technologies they can use. I think a few maybe good points they can use is with all these cloud technologies. Many software companies like ourselves decide to go with no contracts kind of model, no contracts or no minimum or pay as you go, especially if you implement something that's new for you. And it's the case with digital ordering for many operators out there. Choose a system that gives you this flexibility to try, make your mistake, and learn, as opposed to investing a lot of money in developing your own, app, or buying a lot of hardware, or just pick a solution that's really flexible. And maybe you start for 6 months with this. Maybe it's not the cheapest one, but you're going to learn how things work, evolve, and what your customers want, and then you can reassess your choice in 6 months, and happy days. I think the other thing is there's a natural temptation to go for systems that do everything, um, and look for the perfect Swiss knife systems that nails your inventory management and your loyalty program and the ordering and everything. And the reality of the market today is that quite often a system that does everything won't do everything right. And you end up buying something that's maybe a bit more expensive, that's going to be a little bit clunky, that's not really exactly going to tick the boxes, while you could maybe have chosen like one or a couple of software integrated together that would have given you the flexibility, and it would have actually done a better job at these specific things that you're trying to achieve. So it's about keeping this open mind and really looking for the flexibility and the kind of the best in kind software for what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, and I think that's a really, really good point. You had a good point before, actually. Like, also see it as a test in a way, and also, maybe you don't choose the right one first, but you need to learn. It's like a skill. You're training yourself in choosing these things, and don't sign up to anything long term, but also make sure there's flexibility from both sides. And also, I like the thing you said about that. It's also understanding that the best of breed, or the best product for QR codes and digital ordering maybe not be the best system for ordering and inventory. There's the one system that does that really well. So maybe you're going to end up with 4 or 5 systems, but that's okay as long as you have the best ones collectively. So you don't have this clunky thing that both also from the employee point of view, because if the experience for an employee in the back of house is clunky, they will not put the data in you need them put in. They're going to find a way to hack the system, and it's not going to help you. It's actually just going to make it worse. So it's about thinking that into it as well. I think that's very important often, that actually there's a reason why you should choose the best of the best for whatever they do. And often when they can do too many things, is my experience as well, it often fails somewhere in the chain. And it's just going to cost so much time and frustration to try to make it work, because you can't make it work, because you can't be the best at everything. So
exactly. So that's exactly what we're trying to do. And you talked about you mentioned the case of an employee that face like cumbersome systems. That's a good point as well, right? Like as an operator, you choose a system, and you're going to be using it. Your employees are going to be using it. Your consumers are going to be using it. So make sure that for each of those, the system is really easy, really friendly to set up. And again, that's really what we're trying to do when we build the interface of StoreKit.
if we take the trends in technology and hospitality, what do you think the top trends are going to be after? There's been a lot of talk about Omni-Channel, but what is the next big thing as we reopen hospitality over the summer, especially here in the UK? I know every part of the world, almost every country in Europe have different situations, but as we open up again, what do you think is going to be the next big thing operator will focusing on now? They switched on the revenue streams. They probably have more than one. They probably have 3 to 4 revenue streams. They're really excellent operators. And they find out what works, what doesn't work, when to switch it on, switch it off, and all that. So what is the next big step that's going to happen in this world?
Well, that's a good question. Who knows, right? I think what we'll see is, yes, I mean, you said omni-channel. I don't like this word, by the way. But there's no there's no better word really out there when talking about selling, wherever the customer is. I think what we see, I run a software company, so I guess I'll give you a bit that angle, but it's still interesting, I think, for operators. Is software is eating the world. Someone said that. And what we see, and I find this really interesting, is we have people coming to us and telling us, hey, I'm planning on opening a restaurant in September, and we don't want to have a till. And I find that really interesting because these people start thinking, well, wait a minute, now you have this QR code ordering, or QR code or something else. But people use their device to order. E-commerce is everywhere, so they can actually pay from their phone, even if they're in the store. Do I really need to spend 5 or 6 grand on a till system for my staff to manually input news data in? It's like, do I really need to do that and spend that money? So I think that's interesting to think that more and more operators are going to be able to operate without point of sale hardware. That's something that I expect we'll see more and more in the coming 5 to 10 years. Maybe I think for most operators it still seems slightly far-fetched. I think it's the solution is here. You can actually work this way already, and I think it will open so much interesting opportunities of being creative for hospitality, for operators, like just to reinvent the experience of the customers as they come in, as they maybe move around within the venue, just enabling new journeys, which they couldn't do before, because you had to deal with the rigidity of the point of sale being in certain places and staff working in a certain way, or the orders being taken in a certain way. And I think it looks to me like here technology will enable to be creative, to really reinvent hospitality experience, and in fact to reinvent the human experience within the venue. I mentioned before briefly, when I was talking about the staff cost savings. If you put in QR code, you don't need to take the orders, you don't need to take the payment, fine. But what we see with these successful venues that have implemented StoreKit today is they actually reinvest most, if not all, of this cost, talking to customers, engaging with them, talking to them about the food, greeting them, making sure they're happy. And the satisfaction of customers seems to be going up. And I think it's one of these interesting cases where software and the flexibility introduced by technology will allow to reinvent the experience, but also to make it more human. It's not about, oh, now everyone's going to place orders from their phone. They're going to pull out their phone. I don't want them to look at their phone while they're in my restaurant. I think it will be the other way around. It will be about using this technology to actually talk to them more, So I'm quite excited to see this unfolding in the coming few years.
Yeah, so in my view, it's so super interesting, this till-less setup from the outset. Actually, you build a restaurant from the outset. There's no tills, and actually reinvest that into your business. And I totally agree with you that's definitely an opportunity. But of course, you need to act on it as an operator and make it part of your operating system and experience.
I agree, and also, you don't have to be that radical that you go till-less. Some operators might feel uncomfortable about this. You can also have a hybrid model, right? So for instance, without going in detail, but you could still take orders for the food, but you could allow, for instance, the drinks to be ordered digitally. That will still accelerate the service. People come in, they can order the drink, and then you can come to talk to them about the food and take that order maybe in a more traditional way. So you can just really think about things with an open mind and thinking about what your customers want.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. But how do you then think? Because one thing is what's going to happen with technology in the market. How is things going to evolve in the industry? There's so many interesting crystal balls prediction about what's going to happen in the industry in general. But what is your prediction, Christophe?
It's obviously going to be difficult. It is still difficult, and it will remain somewhat difficult. Many challenges for the hospitality industry around staffing, for instance. The Brexit hasn't helped for that, for sure. I think what I hope and expect is that there'll be many opportunities. Some businesses will go down. You'll have a change of generations, new operators taking over sites. And I think we're going to see after this pandemic, like in the next 1, 2, 3, 4 years, we'll see an expansion of the hospitality space and a lot of creativity, expressing itself in the coming years. I expect to see many new concepts, and I think that technology will help these new concepts come to light. So. Yeah, no, I'm actually really optimistic about the hospitality industry. I think obviously people are craving, for these experiences, and the impact of the pandemic and what we've missed during this pandemic is going probably to last for another 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and it will have a positive impact on these people, bringing people together and building experiences. So no, we're very excited about the industry in general. There's lots of good things ahead.
Yeah, and it's also interesting you said that using technology as a core, and you've seen some operators that well, there's nobody that had the best time ever, but there's some of them that's already worked very focused on, especially the QSR concept has really also leveraged that in the pandemic and gain market shares. You have Chipotle in the US, Sweet Green is another one, McDonald's we talked about. And that's the QSR sector, but also the Leon is another operator that's really used this opportunity to. And I know I'm talking about some big names, but again, they were almost on the journey pre-pandemic, and now they say that now their organization and the way they think restaurant have definitely changed. And it was interesting. I talked with a very senior person the other day. He said, we don't talk about how many units we can open. We talk about how much revenue can we create through the brand and the story and the revenue channels we can create that's not connected to buying a location. So first of all, we need to actually utilize the brand instead of just opening locations to boost revenue. And I think that's very interesting. And it lies within what you say again, a totally different thinking about how restaurants will be started from the ground up.
I agree totally, and again, what we do is enabling the independent to have access to the same tools as these chains you mentioned. And again, what we're trying to do is enabling anyone in the UK to have access to the same, if not better, I have to say, tools than these chains you mentioned, in a very easy way. It's quite interesting, because when you're from a technology, if you're implementing technology as a let's call it an enterprise, so let's like a 50 outlet kind of strong chain, you have so many challenges. You have to you have to typically, multiple directors are involved in the decision making. You will have maybe an existing, loyalty program, and you'll have your marketing people who will want to, follow a certain kind of, visual identity. Or I think when you're a small operator, you can make these decisions so quickly, and you can just put together an experience that's really simple, really on brand, really works for you, and test it very quickly. And that's what we try to enable, smaller operators to do.
Another thing that was interesting, actually, I should have asked you before, but actually, you've seen the whole, I just talked about Leon, how they started, creating more of their own label brands, and I've actually seen, some smaller operators also done that and sell that through online shops, and actually, that's what it makes it possible for you suddenly actually to maybe sell some sauces, or it's maybe a component of the meals you're creating you're really good at, or you cook at home kits and stuff like that. And I guess that's also what's interesting. Suddenly you're not depending on just sending a hot plate of food out the door. There's so many other ways you can create revenue, education classes and so on, making bread and whatever it is, roast coffee or whatever it is you want to learn.
I agree. I think all of these things are probably good ideas. Independent can take inspiration from.
Yeah, and I guess it comes down to what fits your brand best and what you can become the best at. Because you shouldn't just do it because that's also what I had a conversation with a couple people. Because everybody else is doing 10 things doesn't mean you need to do things. So maybe you need to find 2 things you do really well and actually just sell more of that.
I agree. As you were talking, I was thinking of the concept of dark kitchens, right? I mean, there's so many of them and heavily funded, and they're all going for this online branding. And I think, independent operators, as you said, like everyone is different. They have their own concept. I think the essence of hospitality is still about bringing people together in a venue. And if you can nail that first, and then you can think about how to build your brand and how you want to expand. But focusing on the experience and making sure they're happy and they have a good time, and using technology for that is key for the independent operator.
That's interesting to say that, Christophe, because Harvard Business School have this podcast run by 3 professors called After Hours, and they had one on the restaurant industry a couple of weeks ago. We shared in our weekly newsletter yesterday, and it actually talk about dark kitchens and dining in. That's the 2 things they talk about, and they talk about that. That one of the big challenges for these online brand or dark kitchen is actually to have the trust of the consumer, and actually because as soon as the consumer can come back and dine in and meet people they trust, they will actually prefer that. That's what they believe, and that's what all the data says. And it's going to be a bloody minefield, they said, to get a dark kitchen operation working, because there's actually not that soul and experience you're looking for as part of buying your product. You're buying things you buy from people you like and you trust, but actually you're not buying from a person, you're just buying from a website. And therefore it's very difficult to get those 2 other things which you need together with your e-commerce side or your online platform or your delivery platform or whatever it is you need that, that you as a consumer there's people behind that. And that's how I make my unrational decision. I don't only make it on pictures and price and taste.
I fully agree. Yeah, completely agree. I'm sure they don't need to hear me saying this, but I don't think, traditional operators we have a venue need to be worried about dark kitchens. It's a very different space. Some, probably many, will be successful, but there's so much to do as an in-venue operator. And again, we talked about Omni-Channel. These people come in, Michael come in, is having, the same thing every Saturday. You can engage with Michael. You can, next time he comes, because you know him from the CRM, or you can run a campaign if that's what you want to do, and offer Michael, something else to try next time, or maybe, on the next rainy day to actually order his favorite dish at home. So try to cross-pollinate through, delivery, in-store, and click and collect.
Yeah, and that's really interesting because a lot of small operators I've talked with, they have said that, okay, we'll need to do the delivery and the the takeaway bit, but exactly our mission is that we know the pandemic ends at some point, and at that point, what our goal is that they are now part of our tribe, and then we want to convert them into sitting down customers because we know our spend will be bigger doing that. And actually we want to build that relationship with them because it's not about the meal today, it's about the loyalty tomorrow. And that's really interesting looking at that. Okay, it is what it is, but let's get the best out of it. But we need to convert them to come back into the restaurant, not just do ordering online. And there will always be some that only will order online. That's okay. But actually we want to move that bell curve for people into the restaurant. And that was an interesting approach, I thought, and very savvy way of thinking about it, getting the best out of the delivery situation as well.
Yeah, I agree with that view, yeah.
Always when people come on the show, I always ask a bit about them as an entrepreneur as well. Is there any like learnings you think as an entrepreneur? Now you've been involved in the industry for a bit more than a decade. You build your own coffee shops. That are like any great advice, problems, challenges, failures you could share with other entrepreneurs, operators out there they should avoid? Pandemic or no pandemic, they often stay quite evergreen. Some of these learnings.
Yeah, sure. So I think for every journey is different. For me, it's about staying humble, and that translates in many ways. It's about admitting that you don't know much. Sounds a bit cliche, but finding the right balance between understanding and accepting that there's many things you don't know, and still exert enough confidence to decide of the direction you want to follow and keep digging in that direction without being distracted. I think also that there's a level of discipline that any entrepreneur needs to set with himself. But I think that comes with the envy and the desire to succeed. But a certain level of discipline and time organization that you need to set up for yourself. Probably setting your objectives, measuring them over time, find your own way to measure it over time. Is probably a good way to go. And I would say if you decide to be an entrepreneur as well, if you go for it, just go for it completely. It's easy to say, but a blank page is probably the best way to kind of put the best out there. I've been an entrepreneur, as you said, like in different ways over the last few years. I think with StoreKit in particular at the moment is we're growing fast. We're putting ourselves out there, and for us, for me and my two co-founders, Angus and Ben, it's a challenge to have eyes on you in a way. But it's probably necessary to actually keep yourself accountable. So stay humble, put yourself out there, and try to learn on the way. It's probably some good advice from me.
I think it's a very good advice, because we often forget that, especially when we have a bit of success. We often forget those things and forget that we are just on a learning journey, and there's a next challenge around the corner we need to solve. So it's good to celebrate, but don't become too overconfident about that you know everything now, because you don't. If at the end of the conversation, Christophe, always ask the guest as well to give like 3 top advice to leaders out there in the industry, what they should do to accelerate their business. And we can take maybe the tech angle here, because that's what we've been talking about, or digitalization. What is your top 3 advice you want to leave them with?
Considering seriously the options out there in terms of new technology, particularly digital ordering, because that's the one bit that's really new today, and that is deeply game-changing for them. These multiple ways of interacting with customers digitally, even though the operator might see themselves as more of a traditional kind of operators, there are ways this digital technology can transform and enhance the way you work, and at the end of the day, how much margin you're making. So you probably want to really, really explore that. I think that's really the big advice. Take care of your staff. Obviously, they know that already, but finding good staff, I think, is going to be quite difficult in hospitality in general, and make sure that you I think, again, they know that. I don't need to tell them, but make sure that you take care of your staff and probably give them tools that they enjoy using, and also talk to your customers, right? Talk to these consumers coming back to the restaurant. What do they want to see? How do they want to? How do they, how do they want to interact with you? What do they expect from you as a restaurant, as a pub? Take feedback from them. About the food, about the environment, about the technology, the ordering process they follow, and try to understand why they're saying this, and if you can find better ways to please them. So that would be my 2 cents.
Super advice, really, really relevant. And actually, the last one, I think it's really relevant because it's actually an opportunity that can be missed a lot, actually talking with these people as they come back. And I think there's a lot of gold in there, specifically for your business. And actually, a very good question. One of my friends that runs a restaurant, he asked them, so why did you choose to come back and eat with us? And I can tell you there's some interesting insight that comes out of that question just for him as well. So I love that. Really good, all of them, but especially that one, because I think we need to shape a new experience for people as we emerge out of whatever we call this, the new paradigm, the new now, the new level of the pandemic. So, but again, Christophe, thank you so much for coming on and talking about digitalization, and especially around focusing on the smaller independent operators, because I think it's really key that we get them covered. We often talk about what the big boys do in technology, but this was really interesting. And I send all my power and energy to you and the team and your ventures going forward. And I'm sure we will connect very soon.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you so much. I'm very glad you invited me on your great show. Thank you. And I wish good luck to everyone for the coming months. Best of luck to everyone in the industry.
Thank you so much, Christophe, for your insight and thinking around e-commerce technology for smaller operators. If you want to learn more about how you become better at e-commerce and digitalization of your revenue streams, I would recommend you to visit a bonus episode we've done about digital transformation, where Nick Popovich, the co-founder and CEO of Vitamojo, will give you more insights into this. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please share, rate, review, or subscribe to one of our channels. Together with BizSimply, we are also right now conducting a survey with the aim to collect best practice on how leaders in the industry are transforming their organizations so they can deliver experience that both employees and customers are demanding. Please participate via the link in the show notes. A big thank you to BizSimply for supporting us, bringing great insights, strategies, and tools to help the industry thrive, not just survive. Check them out at bizsimply.com or via their social at BizSimply or at BizSimplyHQ. You can also email them directly on advice@bizsimply.com. A big thank you to Vina Charlton, who is the show producer and editor from the Podcast Collective. Tune in next time for another interview, and in the meantime, find out more about us and subscribe to our community and download free leadership tools at hospitalitymavericks.com. And don't worry, if you didn't get all of this, there will be links in the show notes. Thank you, and be Maverick.